Welcome back, and here we go again. Next change is going to be my big brown truck box delivery of my new TKX transmission. That's going to replace my 3650 in my Coyote swapped SN95. People have said that you can shift okay with them at high RPMs, but it doesn't like it, and I find myself short shifting a lot and sometimes not even being able to pull it out of gear without lifting. So I'm going to switch over to the TKX, have a stock Ford bell housing, and hopefully my goal is to do this and be able to leave my front suspension intact with the long tubes on, pull the transmission, snake the bell housing out if I ever have to, when I have to replace a clutch. So that's going to be the ultimate goal. So I have a lot of work ahead of me, dropping the suspension again, K-member, jacking, barring the engine up and all that, which I'm not going to go through a lot of that detail because I've done that before in my videos. So once I come back, we're going to be jumping right into the heart of the matter and getting down and dirty. So stay tuned. My engine bar across here, I have a chain on either side that's basically bolted to an exhaust port. The chain holding the block on this side and holding the block on this side. Plus I got blocks in the front here. So it'll be removing the mount, letting the transmission drop a little bit, pull all the bolts, get my jack stand underneath here, drop the transmission and pull it out. I'm going to get the long tube headers first and get those on, and then I'm just going to see, now that I know that this fits pretty snug, how I'm going to be able to maybe snake this in. I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to find out. I just have one header on, and I could tell just by looking that this wasn't going to work, so I'm not even bothering putting the second one on. Because taking the bell housing, you got the long tubes are going to be like right here, but even if you had one off, you still can't get this in there. The only other thing I could think of would be to really remove the engine as low as possible in the back, to tilt this down to give you some clearance from the tunnel. But as far as trying to snake it in, that's going to be like a lost cause. So I'm still going ahead with my project, but at least I know now that this is the case. And when I come to do the clutch the next time, I don't have to do it now, this is the new clutch. I'll just do some figuring and I'll come up with a plan at that point. I'm going to remove the clutch fork. So I'm going to put a straight edge here across the flange, and then I'm just measuring to the ball. And 3 5/8, which I believe is like 3.65. Try this and see what we got. That's at 3 5/8, and I believe that's 3.650. So we're going to set the new one at 3 5/8. I have my new clutch ball right here. We're going to thread this into the bell housing. And now we'll take our measurement again. We're set on the same ball dimension. So I know that this dimension from here to the front of the cover, or the front of the bell housing, is going to be correct. So I can go ahead and continue, put the fork on, then we can stab the bell housing and do what's next. I just did a couple of quick calculations, and basically distance, I did straight edge. I did this with all the camera down, but about 24.5 is from the front of the transmission, front of the bell housing, to the rear mount. So taking into account that this distance, this is 7 inches, so we need 24.5 to the rear mount here. So let's come over to the TKX, and this is roughly 15.5 plus 7 is 22.5, and we need 24.5. So 22.5 there. And we have about 24. I mean, I can call it 24.5. So we're 2 inches forward with the TKX mount, plus the distance from center line to the mounting surface here is 3 inches, and it's 2.25 on the TKX. So I'm going to have to make a 3/4 inch spacer. And so that distance from the center line of the shaft here, this is like 2.25, and on the TKO it's down to, or the 3650 is 3 inches. So I need to make a spacer right here for my mount, plus my mount is going to go 2 inches this way. So I'm going to have to figure that out. But once I get it up in there, I'll kind of go over this. I'll put it on the transmission jack and go from there. I'm just trying to do some calculating right now. The mid tower, the shift tower for the TKX, this part of the transmission case is a little bit higher than the 3650 in this area. Now the distance between the center line here to here is about 3.25 inches, and the center line of this, the TKX, is just about 2.75 inches. So even if it was another 1/2 inch higher, you can see that this area is getting really close to the top of the body where it hits in the tunnel. And that's why I'm going to be relieving this area right here just a little bit. I'll just take my 8-pound persuader and kind of push this up a little bit. It was clearing, but it was a little bit closer than what I would really want, and I'm going to go ahead and just help give myself a little bit of room. But that's the only thing here. I'll be taking the weight off. I don't have any clearance in there where it hits right here, and you can't relieve this because this is where the bolt hole for the transmission goes. So I'm not going to relieve this material, but I don't need this on. I know I don't have one on my other putt-putt over here, so, and it works fine. I think it's for vibration issues. This is my MDL shifter. So I had to relieve a little corner right in there for interference with the nut on the shift handle itself. This is going to be going in. Okay, getting ready to put the transmission back in. Drilled myself a 1/4 inch hole here in this tab and made a template out of cardboard and put it away for a bracket in case I need to make one later to hold my O2 right now. At least I can zip tie it here, plus I can zip tie it this one. And also not using the overdrive switch, so cut the end off, put that away, shrink wrapped the 2 leads, and then shrink wrapped the sleeve as well, and then just zip tied it to the speedometer bracket. This will be out of the way. I'll not have to worry about it flipping around or tying it up later, so it can just stay there. And I'll be ready to put this back in. I did my relief on the transmission tunnel, which I'll go over to right now. I just did a little bit of relieving with the 8-pound sledge just to take some of this and pound it up a little bit. Kind of smoothed off this edge where somebody had kind of cut this section out before. So pretty much this is going to give me the clearance that I need. Bell housing's off, but it's ready to go back on, sitting right here. So I took the weight off of the clutch fork here, and then while I had it out, I just kind of made it look a little bit prettier Ta-da. And so now this is ready to go back in. So I'm going to bolt this in, and then I'm going to stab the transmission. I'm leaving these two loose just as a reminder to tighten these, and I'll come back and I'll grab each one of these again. Get the transmission back in, bolt that up, get it up in the air, check my main shaft to be about 4 degrees, and then I'll measure for the mount that goes back here for the rear mount and go from there. So this overall dimension here is 3 1/4, which is what I had planned before. I just did a final mock-up of my spacer, what I'm going to need to get my 4 degree main shaft angle, and I am going to need a 3/4 inch, so I put a 3/4 inch piece of plywood in here, drilled it and mocked it up. Now I'm going to take it and have my buddy's got some stock. We'll make a aluminum block right here and use this, put it in here as a spacer, and that'll be set. So I'm going to continue buttoning up the rest of the transmission, putting the exhaust on, and yada yada, and go from there. Just got through filling the transmission with the AMSOIL synthetic transmission fluid that came when I purchased the transmission from Modern Driveline. So I'm going to go ahead now and put the tower on. And this is another one of their products, Modern Driveline. And this can go on either way, which is actually kind of nice. I've already kind of preset this, as I mentioned earlier. It's nice that they have an O-ring, so you don't have to worry about goop all the time. And I'll get it down on my tower and install the bolts. So this is where everything's going to be. Again, I have plenty of room. Tower comes up. And again, I like their shift tower because you can change the position by this block that just goes right on top of their shifter. And like I said, I could bring this one back a little bit more, about another inch back this way. I think it's like 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches, 0.6 to like 1.6 or something like that. The job now is to put the, I'm going to put the right side header back on, so I have the last 3 top bolts in, because the headers are slotted, so it'll make it easy to slide up in there. Well, sort of easy. So I'll slide that up in there, make sure that they're intact, and then I'm going to get the rest of these started, and then I'll just tighten them up. So that's the process right now. Woo-wee. Onto the driver's side for the exhaust. These back 2 are slotted, so maybe I'll leave that like this, and then I'll have to start the rest of them. Pull that out a little bit. So I'm going to put the exhaust up, press the gasket, and then slide the exhaust down over that, and then start the rest of the bolts. The driver's long tube header is in, all the bolts are tight. Again, here is just the motor mount. This bolt's a little bit tight to get started, but it's doable. Ready to pull my bar out now. Chains are loose, so I just pull up the chains, take this off, pull this out of the way, and then I'll put the K-member in, let the engine back down with the jack that's underneath. Pretty much this has all been untouched, so that's good. That's a plus. Gonna start today making the new spacer here. This is a 3/4 inch block, so I got some 3/4 inch material. I'm gonna be pulling this out and making my spacer to put in here. Okay, I have my template block spacer here and my material that I'm going to be making my spacer with. It's like 3/4 of an inch thick. I wrote the measurements down in millimeters to make it a little bit easier, but basically this is 4 inches wide by roughly 1 inch and 7/8, I think. Yeah, which equates to 102 millimeters and 48 millimeters this way. And that's just, I'm just going to cover a lot of the material on the support. So my distance between the holes is 55 millimeters, which is like 2 3/16. So I'm going to bring it in 23 and a half from each side, and this is 48 millimeters this way. I'll separate the distance at 24, and then I'll cross this and make my marks and take it to the drill press and drill a hole. So right now I'm going to put this in my saw, and we'll continue on. Right, I've got this in my saw, so I'm going to go ahead and start the cutting. I kept my line so I know I have my distance right, so I'm going to clean up the edges, just kind of smooth these out a little bit, but I'm going to wait until I take it over and make my marks and get this thing drilled. So I got this in my drill press vise. Center punched holes 55 millimeters apart, and I'm going to drill pilot holes, and then I'm just going to start stepping this out to 7/16, and then we'll go stick it in the car. Okay, I have my 2 pilot holes ready here. I'll just double check. Sure, I've been triple checking, so I'm in my 55 millimeters. So I'm set here, so I'm just going to keep stepping these out, and I'll probably do, when I get closer, I'll do a reverse bore. Drill so far, turn it over, come down the other side so I have a clean surface. I don't have any chips out there. So okay, I'm on my last step up. I've got one more hole, and then I'm going to flip this over. Okay, I've got this drilled out, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean up, chamfer around each edge. Kind of smooth this out a little bit, and then I'm going to go stick it on and see what happens. I'm just deburring the edges now. I'll just smooth that up a little bit, but we're going to go do a test fit. Have my spacer back over here. I've done a test fit just before I stick it in there. Just, you know, we'll just double check, but it lines up with the holes here just fine in the transmission mount. So I've got my transmission jack underneath to hold the transmission up. I've already gone ahead and smoothed the edges and take the roughness out of it. So I pull my block out, and this should go in and tighten these up. So I got mount in here. This is tight. I've already taken it down the road just to double check and see how everything works, which it did. My angle on the transmission is set 4 degrees. I have 1.5 on the drive line. Check that. It's basically the same as the 3650, same position, same readings. So I am really happy about that. So now the next thing is to put some miles on it and check it out. Just want to evaluate some of the shifting through this and get a feel for it. I'd say it's a lot smoother than a 3650. Has a nice feel to it. I'll get some revs up here. All right, that was a 6500 shift, which actually felt really good. A lot easier to shift than the 3650 under a load, or so right now I'm really happy. That wraps up the TKX swap on my Mustang from the 3650. It has a lot smoother shifts, a lot smoother high RPM shifts, and I want to give a shout out to all the guys up at Modern Driveline. Spoke with Russ, got me straightened out on my shift tower, which made things a lot nicer. They have nice offsets there, as I mentioned. So again, the downside was not being able to pull my clutch with the long tube headers in, but at least I can get the transmission out, do some other work if needed, and I might come up with some other solution the next time when I have to do that. So again, I want to thank you for sticking with me, and stay tuned. I'll probably have more down the line. Thanks again.